I've been doing this music thing for almost 30 years. When I really sit back and think about that, it's hard to believe how much time has passed. Almost 3 decades of writing, recording, performing, traveling, meeting people, making mistakes, learning lessons, making music, losing people, gaining friends, creating memories, and continuing to push forward even when there wasn't much of a reason to believe anybody was paying attention. I've had the opportunity to work with some names that I never would have imagined working with when I first started. I've crossed paths and worked with artists like Lil Flip, Cognito, Wishbone, Blaze Hunter, and many others. I've had my music heard on XM radio at least twice that I know of. I've performed more than 500 live shows. I've stood on stages in front of crowds, dealt with the nerves, the excitement, the long drives, the shitty venues, the good venues, the empty rooms, the packed rooms, and everything in between. I've also spent years behind the microphone doing something completely different from performing. Through my podcast, I've had the opportunity to sit across from and interview people who have accomplished some incredible things in music and entertainment. I've gotten to hear their stories, ask questions, laugh with them, talk about the good times, the bad times, and everything that comes with trying to make it in this crazy industry. And here's the part that sometimes makes me stop and think. After almost 30 years, I never had the hit. I've never had a song blow up and become a massive success. I've never stood on a stage accepting a major music award. I've never had a record label hand me a huge check. I've barely made any money from music at all. If you looked at success strictly by money, awards, chart positions, streams, fame, or how many people know your name, then maybe you'd look at my career and say I didn't make it. Maybe I didn't. But I'm starting to realize that there are different ways to measure a life in music. I may not have a gold record hanging on my wall. I may not have a trophy case full of awards. I may not have millions of dollars sitting in the bank because of music. But I have memories. I have stories. I have songs that I created because I had something inside me that needed to come out. I have people I've met along the way that I probably never would have met if I hadn't picked up a microphone nearly 30 years ago. I have over 500 live performances that actually happened. Those weren't dreams. Those weren't numbers I made up. I was actually there. I got on those stages and performed. I have worked alongside artists I respected. I've had my music reach places I never expected it to reach. I've been on XM radio. I've built a podcast and had the opportunity to interview people whose names I grew up knowing. I've watched the music industry change from CDs and tapes to downloads, streaming, YouTube, social media, and AI. I've watched entire eras of music come and go, and somehow I'm still here. That's something. I don't know how other people look at me. Maybe some people see me as an underground artist. Maybe some people see me as somebody who never quite made it. Maybe some people don't think about me at all. Maybe there are people who respect what I've done, and maybe there are people who think I've wasted my time. Honestly, I can't control any of that. What I can control is whether I continue to be grateful for the opportunity I was given. Because the truth is, I never started doing this because I knew I was going to become famous. I started because I loved music. I loved hip-hop. I loved the feeling of creating something that didn't exist before I made it. I loved being able to take the things in my head, the things I've experienced, the things I've felt, and turn them into songs. And somewhere along the way, music became more than just music. It became part of my life. I've had ups and downs. I've had moments where I wanted to quit. I've had moments where I questioned whether any of it was worth it. I've watched other people pass me by. I've watched people come into the game after me and accomplish things I never accomplished. And yeah, sometimes that hurts. I'm human. Of course, I would have loved to have a hit record. Of course, I would have loved to make real money from my music. Of course, I would have loved to win awards and have thousands or millions of people know my name. But I can't rewrite the story just because it didn't turn out the way I imagined it would when I started. The story is what it is. Almost 30 years. 500 plus shows. Countless songs. Countless hours in studios and behind microphones. Collaborations with artists I respected. 2 appearances on XM radio that I know of. A podcast that has allowed me to interview artists and people with incredible stories. And an entire lifetime of experiences that I wouldn't trade for anything. Maybe I didn't become a superstar. Maybe I never became a household name. Maybe I never got the big break everybody waits for. But I got to do what I love. And there are people who never get that opportunity. So when I look back, I'm not going to pretend everything was perfect. I'm not going to pretend I accomplished every goal I set for myself. I didn't. But I'm also not going to call it a failure. Because I stayed. I kept creating. I kept performing. I kept recording. I kept interviewing people. I kept putting my work out into the world. And after almost 30 years, I'm still here talking about music. That's something I'm proud of. Maybe my biggest accomplishment isn't a song. Maybe it isn't an award. Maybe it isn't money. Maybe it's the fact that after all these years, I still give a damn. I'm thankful for every stage, every song, every collaboration, every person who ever listened, every person who ever supported me, every person who ever gave me an opportunity, every artist who ever trusted me enough to work with me, every person I've interviewed, every person who showed up when there wasn't a reason to, and even the people who doubted me. They all became part of the story. I don't know what the next chapter looks like. But after nearly 30 years, I've learned something. You don't always get to decide how successful your journey looks to other people. You only get to decide whether the journey meant something to you. And this journey has meant everything to me. I may never have the hit. I may never win an award. I may never become rich from music. But I got almost 30 years of memories that nobody can take away from me. And for that, I'm grateful. I'm still here. I'm still making music. And I'm still thankful that I ever got the chance to do this in the first place.